Hello, welcome back to Little Bang Discovery Plus. My name is Wendy and I'm from Children's Discovery, and this is the follow-on program to the Little Bang Discovery Club. So that was all about how science works, and you should have been trying that out as a team. You had your child, who is the junior discoverer, doing all the thinking, and their adult is their lab assistant who's helping them. So once again, those roles continue in this program. So we want the children to be doing all the thinking and the adults giving them a chance to do that. So don't jump in too quickly, adults. Let your child have a chance to think about something and tell you about it. So in Little Bang Discovery Plus, it's similar to how Little Bang Discovery Club was. I'll be showing you how to set up the experiments, then you can pause the video and have a go yourselves, and then we'll have a look and see what my results were and what your results were, and see if you got the same or something different, and try and explain why. Now, our first session, we're going to do a bit of revision about how science works, so if you haven't done the first club, this might help you catch up, but it would be really good if you have the opportunity to do Little Bang Discovery Club first. Now, the first program is all about how to think like a scientist. So we're going to review what scientists do and the sort of thinking that they do. Now, in Little Bang Discovery Club, you put together your own discovery box. So if you've still got that from last time, then certainly get it out, reuse it, and you can add these things to it. If you don't have that still, or you didn't do it last time, then let's start again. So you might have a big container like this, or you might have a shopping bag or something that you're going to try and find these things to put into it. Now, all these things you should be able to get from the supermarket, or you might already have them around the house. So we've tried to include things that you can get hold of quite easily. If there's anything that you are stuck with, you can always email us and we can send you some things. Our email address is info@childrensdiscovery.org.au. So please feel free to be in touch with us if you would like us to send you something, or if you've got any questions about what we're doing. So with your container, these are the things that you're going to try and collect to put in there that you will use over the course of this program. So if you need to pause the video, go and find something, put it in, then feel free to do that. So the first thing that you can look for is some blue tack. So we'll be using this a number of times. So if you've got any blue tack, even if you've only got a couple of strips, that will be fine. So pop that in your box. Also, you'll need an eraser, because we're going to be drawing and writing things down, and it's good to have an eraser just in case you want to change something. So pop that in. If you've got a notebook or an exercise book, we're going to use this as our discovery diary. So we're going to make lots of discoveries and we're going to do lots of recording of our results in there. Now, you might like to do a pretty cover on your discovery diary. If we were doing this face to face, this is the discovery diary cover that we'd give you, but you don't have to do that. But if you've got the time, you might like to do a picture on a piece of paper and stick it on the front to make a discovery diary. So we'll pop that one in. You'll also need a pencil to do your recording with. You'll also need a measuring cup. So my measuring cup goes up to 250 mils. Sometimes you might have a bigger one. You might already have one in the kitchen that goes up to about 600 mils. But it needs to have the numbers and the gradations on it, because we want to measure things fairly accurately. So see if you can find a measuring cup to pop in. Now, the next thing that you might not have or might not be able to get is this thing, which is a pipette. So this is where you can squeeze the top and suck liquids up or push liquids out, similar to an eyedropper. So if you've got something that's got an eyedropper in it, see if you can pinch that to use for this program, or it's very similar to a pipette. You squeeze the top and you can get liquid to go up. But if you've got neither of those, you can do a similar thing with a straw, which we're going to show you today in this session. So that one of those or some of those can go in. We'd also like you to use a ruler. So if you've got a ruler, or you might have a tape measure that looks like this, or you might have a tape measure, a little tape measure that looks like this. Another one I've picked up in my house like this one. So if you've got a ruler or a tape measure or both, you can pop them into your Discovery Plus box. Now, something that I've managed to find in my supermarket were these stickers, which we'll be using when we make graphs. So you don't have to use the stickers. It makes it very easy to plot the points by using the stickers, but on the graph you can just colour in a dot. So if you can get hold of these and you'd like to, then that's great, but if you can't manage that, there are other things you can use instead. And the other thing that we'll be using are these syringes. Now, these are just empty syringes without the sharp bit on the end, of course. These are really good for measuring with. Similarly though, you might have something like this from your children's medicine bottles. So a couple of different types here. So if you've got one of these, oh, that's like a syringe, but one of these which comes off the medicine bottle, that's a similar thing that you can use. So either syringes or these, that they'll do. And if you've got a timer, I've got a timer like this, but you've probably got a timer on someone's phone, or you might have a kitchen timer, or you might even have a second hand on a clock that you could use. So we'll be using a timer as well. So if you can manage to gather up those things, go on a bit of a treasure hunt now to find all those things to make your Discovery Plus box. And you'll want to have that available every session because we'll be using different things from it during all of the sessions. So that's our Discovery Plus box. Now, the things that we learnt about in the first club, Little Bang Discovery Club, was what scientists do. One of the things that we're going to be doing in this program is having a chat between yourselves about certain things that I'm going to ask you. So we want you to practice talking to each other, giving each other time to think about something and then to discuss something. And if you disagree, that's fine. Scientists disagree all the time. And we're going to be doing experiments to try and find evidence to support your views. And you might change your mind after you've done the experiments. So it's okay if something doesn't seem quite right to one of you. If you disagree, that's absolutely fine. By the end of the session, we might have changed your mind, or you might have learnt something new. You might have gathered more evidence and have a different idea. Now, the first thing we're going to get you to chat to your partner about is, what do scientists do? So our first session is all about how to think like a scientist. So I want you to think about, what is it that scientists do? If you did the Little Bang Discovery Club, you did lots of different activities that scientists do, so you probably know those answers already. If you didn't, have a bit of a think now. Talk to your partner. What is it that scientists do? All right, so one of the things that scientists do that we learnt about in the Little Bang Discovery Club is they like to collect things. So did you remember that scientists like to collect things? And one of the collections that we looked at was a collection of socks in the first program. And we looked at how they're folded in their pairs and sorted nicely, and all the different ways that you can sort different socks and where you keep them so they're easy to find. So one of the things scientists like to do is to collect things. You've probably got a few collections at home already. You might have a collection of all different toys that you could sort into different types. You might have a collection of plates and cups in the kitchen. So lots of different collections you've probably got in your house. And one of the things that then scientists often do with their collections is they like to measure them. So we're going to actually do a measuring activity right now. And the first activity is we're going to be using your feet to measure with. Now, I've put down 2 marks at the front of my table here, and I'm going to measure that space, and I'm going to start out by measuring with my feet. So I'm going to put down my first one carefully right on the edge of the tape. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6. Almost 6 of my feet go across this space. So if I was going to draw a graph of that, and this is something that you could put in your discovery diary, but I've made a big one to make it easier for you to see. So if I was going to do a graph of that, I would write Wendy here. So there I am, and it was almost 6. So this is where you can either make a dot with a pen or something, or if you've got some sticky dots like this, you can stick on a dot. So here's my number of steps, almost 6. So I've either made a dot, or you can stick on a dot like that, which is good fun for the kids to do. Now I'm going to ask my colleague Adam to come out and to measure with his feet, and we'll see how many feet Adam takes to walk across the space. Okay, so here comes Adam, ready to count?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. So Adam only had 5.5 steps. So my dot is sort of there. So these dots are perhaps a bit big, or my graph is a bit small, one or the other. So we both walked the same distance, but we got a different number. Why do you think that is? Talk to your grown-up about why did we go the same distance and we were really careful with how we did it, but we got a different number. Now, did you work out why we got a different number? I think Adam's feet are a little bit bigger than mine, and so it didn't take as many steps for him. So what would be a more accurate way, or well, not necessarily accurate, but a more consistent way for us to measure that space? What would be a better thing for us to use? Talk to your grown-up about what you think might be a better thing to use. Okay, did you decide it might be better to use a ruler or a tape measure? All right, so let's use our ruler to measure how much space this is. So we've got 30 centimetres plus 30 makes 60, plus 30 makes 90, plus 30 makes 120, plus 30 makes 150, plus 18 makes 168 centimetres. So if we, instead of having steps up the side here, had centimetres, so if we make that 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. So 168 would be a dot about here. So let's put on a different coloured dot. Like that. And do you think if Adam came out and used the ruler, do you think he'd get the same result? Talk to your grown-up, what do you think? Would you like to try it, Adam? Okay, so Adam's using the ruler this time. 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. Yes, 168. Thank you, Adam. So the ruler gave the same number of centimetres because the ruler is the same standard length, and any ruler that you use should be, the centimetres should be the same standard length. So when scientists measure, they usually use a ruler or something like that, which is called a formal measure, whereas using our feet was an informal measure. Okay, now lots of other things you can measure, which we'll talk about at the end of this session. But now we're going to do an experiment. So far we've talked about how scientists like to collect things, they like to measure things, and they like to test things. They like to test things by doing experiments. And the important thing about science is the tests are always fair, so that the results mean that something doesn't have an unfair advantage over whatever they're testing. Now, I want you to think back to Little Bang Discovery Club. Can you remember when we did the egg that was put into tap water and into salt water, and how it floated in the salty water but sank in the tap water? So see if you can remember that experiment. We're going to test some more things the way we tested the egg, and you're going to set this up for yourself. So you might like to have some newspaper down in case there are some spills. You might also like to have a towel handy just in case there are some spills. And you'll need 2 cups or glasses to use. And what we're going to do is use our measuring cup that we got out before, and we're going to put about 150 mils of water into our measuring cup. So I've got a jug here. I'm going to turn the cup around so that I can see where the 150 is. So I'm going to go right up to the line, and I'm going to hold it up so that it's at my eye level, so I'm being really accurate. So I've got 150 mils of water, and I'm going to pour that into one of the cups. Now, to make it a fair test, how much water should I put into the other cup? Talk to your grown-up. How much water should I put into the other cup to make it fair? If you said 150 mils, you were right. So let's do that again, measuring really carefully. Oh, put in a little bit too much that time, so I'll tip a bit out. Okay, so once again, I've got 150 mils in my cup, and I pour that into there. So we've got 2 cups with the same amount of water in them. Now, to one of them, I'm going to add some salt. So I've got my bag of salt. I've got a tablespoon measure. I'm going to put in 2 level tablespoons. So that means I'm going to level off the salt, trying not to spill it everywhere. So I've got a nice level tablespoon, putting it into one of the cups. And now I need another one the same. And then you can use, I'm using a pop stick because it was nice and flat, or you can use a teaspoon. Give it a good stir. So we've got our tap water and our salty water. Now, the things that we're going to try and test, so I'm going to show you the things that I've got to test, but you don't have to use these. You could find different things depending on what you've got at home. I'm going to use a bouncy ball. I'm going to use a marble. You might have one or both of those. I'm going to use a stone, or you might have a smaller pebble. I'm going to use a cork, or you might have a piece of cork like this, either of those. I'm going to use some pumice, which I collected off the beach, but you might have something like this pumice, which comes from the supermarket in the beauty aisle, the chemist aisle, where there's loofahs and brushes and things. So you might find some pumice in the supermarket like that. And the other thing that I'm going to use is a grape. All right, so if you can try and gather up those things, and then we're going to put one, but before we do, we're going to have a guess, make a prediction. Do I think the stone will float or sink in the tap water? And then do I think it will float or sink in the salty water. So before you test, you've got to have a guess or make a prediction, because scientists do that as well. All right, so gather up all your things, do the experiment, and then make a pile perhaps of things that sank in both, things that floated in both, and anything that floated in one but sank in the other one. So you're going to end up with 3 piles of things, depending on whether they sank or floated. So try that experiment, and then when you come back, we'll have a look and see what mine do and see if you got the same results.
You're doing good.
Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully you've had a guess what you think is going to happen, and you've made 3 piles, or 2 or 3 piles, depending upon what your items did. So the first thing I'm going to test is the stone, and I'm going to make a prediction. I think that it will sink in both. So let's try that. Put it in the tap water. Yes, it sank as I've predicted. And put it in the salty water. Yes, it sank. So I'm going to make a pile over here of things that sank. Now I'm going to use my cork, and I'm going to make a prediction. I think it's going to float in both of them. Yes, floating in the water and floating in the salt water. So I'll make a pile over there of things that float in both. Now I'm going to try my bouncy ball. Oh, this is quite light. So I think it's going to float in both. Oh, yes, I thought it was going to go down, but it bounced back up just like a bouncy ball you might expect. Okay, and in the salt water, yes, it floats in there. So that can join the cork. Now the marble, it feels quite heavy, probably a bit like the stone. So I think it's going to sink in both. Yep, down the bottom of the tap water and down the bottom of the salty water. Okay, now for my piece of pumice. This feels really light. Pumice is really interesting because it actually comes out of a volcano. So usually the things that come out of a volcano are very dense and heavy rocks, but the pumice is formed by being thrown up into the air and has a lot of air holes in it, which if you have a close look, you might be able to see. So I think that this is going to float. Yes, floats in that one. And I think it will float in here as well. Yes, floats in that one. So it joins the floating pile that's over here. Okay, now the grape. Okay, now the grape, I think it's quite light. I think it's going to float in both. Let's see what happens. Oh, no, it went straight to the bottom. So it was sinking in there. And if I put it in the salty water, oh, it floats in the salty water. So the grape is in a special pile on its own because it was a sinker in the tap water, but it floated in the salty water. So, did you get similar results to that? What other things did you test? Perhaps have a chat with your grown-up now about the results you got and whether you got expected or unexpected results. Now, after scientists test things, they like to record what happened. So that's what your discovery diary is for. What I'd like you to do is perhaps make a drawing. So if I was going to make a drawing, I would draw my 2 cups and put the water in. So my 2 cups with the water in, I might shade this one in a bit to make it look like it's salty water, and your grown-up might like to do some labelling for you. So you could say tap water here and salty water here. So your grown-up might do some labels for you with some words. And then you might like to draw a picture, and the picture that I'd really like to draw is I'd like to draw the grape down the bottom of the tap water and then floating up the top of the salty water. You might like to draw your piles, your different piles, the ones that sank and the ones that floated. You might like to do a drawing of everything that's in your, that got tested and where they were, whether they were sinking at the bottom or floating at the top. So as well as doing experiments, the scientists like to record their results, and drawing pictures or taking photos on your phone is a way that you can record your results, or using words, which your grown-up can help you with. Okay, so now at the start, I asked you, what do scientists do? So have you remembered some other things that scientists do that you had forgotten about? Have you learnt some new things that scientists do? So it might be a good thing now on your next page, perhaps, to write down all the things that scientists do. So they like to collect things, they like to measure things, they like to test things by doing experiments, they like to record their results, draw pictures or graphs or write down words, and then they'll often have more ideas. Oh, one thing I left out just then, before they test, they like to predict or guess what's going to happen. So lots of things that scientists do. Now, that brings us close to the end of our first session, How to Think Like a Scientist. I've got some more ideas for you if you'd like some other experiments to go on with before the next session. There are some things you could do. You could make up some sorting games. So you might get out your toys and sort them in different ways. So you might put all the soft toys together, you might put all the trains together, and all the cars together. All different ways of sorting, so that you could sort with toys, you could sort with other things, but maybe check with your grown-up first if that's okay. You might like to do some measuring, so you could use your ruler, you could use your feet, you could use your timer to do some measuring. So there's lots of things you can measure at home. And you might like to do some more testing with the salt water and the tap water, gather some more things from around the house and see whether they will float or sink in the salt water or the tap water, and have a guess first, and then do the test and see what actually happens. Okay, so well done for your first session. Now you know how to think like a scientist, and the next session we'll be looking at completely new things. Each session we do a new scientific skill we'll be practicing. So today we will be revising everything that scientists do. Next time we'll be concentrating on a particular skill that scientists do and learning about a new topic.